Hey everybody, welcome to season 1, episode 9 of the Alone series, a commentary on individual episodes from season 1 of History Channel's Alone. I wanted to just go ahead and say thank you to anybody who's watched these videos. Please remember to like and subscribe to get more of them. We're going to be going through every single episode all the way through all the series. Just talking about this stuff. This is my own personal opinions. So please leave your own comments. Watch the show. Check it out. It's on History Channel. The first 2 seasons are also available free on Amazon Prime. This show is one of my favorites. We're now nearing the end. There's only 3 episodes left, so 9, 10, and 11. In the last episode, we kind of saw everybody's journey. We saw everybody who quit. And it's real interesting to me to see all the people who quit. There's such a vast difference between the people who are still there and the people who aren't. So within the first 7 days, 6 of the guys quit. We're now at like 30 days, so a month, and so an extra 3 weeks and nobody else has quit. And so it becomes really interesting to me to see how fast a lot of people dropped and then suddenly nobody's quit in like 3 weeks. It's just kind of gone on and gone on. Now we're getting to the winter months, though, so it's getting colder. Back in episode 7, we saw the frost was starting to come out, which means it's going to get cold. The animals are going to change. The fishing patterns are going to change. And this creates a whole new challenge, and this might chew up some guys and spit them out. So we're going to go ahead and click start and kind of see where this goes. So Sun Tzu says, if quick, I survive. If not quick, I am lost. This is death. And that can be part of the thing. If you don't constantly move, you're going to be in trouble. So Lucas had some pretty good luck. The way he's fishing is just not the way I personally would have done it with the float. But, I mean, it's working for him. He caught a fish out there. I mean, the biggest thing is to really maintain health. These guys need to be having, like, a fish a day. And I don't know that they're getting that far. Sam got a mouse. I mean, one mouse has basically the calories of a pizza pocket, like a little tiny one. So it's really not much, to be honest. It's actually going to be very... I mean, he would literally need to catch dozens of mice a day, every single day, to maintain his calorie content. So food's going to be a problem. And it's interesting to see what goes on with everybody, but I don't know. All right, we're through the recap. So let's go take a look at what's going on with everybody. So we're 32 days in. So just a little bit over a month, and there's still 4 guys right now. Nobody else is called out. That's really interesting. I mean, the biggest part, these guys don't know who has and hasn't tapped out. You don't know if there's 2 guys out there or if all 10 are still out there. So this is interesting. Lucas is going to try to build a yurt structure, which is a Mongolian, basically a Mongolian tent structure. And I think it's honestly a good idea. I mean, yurts, if you do them right, he's going to have a bit more of an opportunity. I don't know if he's going to leave the top open or not. If you leave a hole, we talked about this in the last episode of doing a pit house. And a yurt's basically the same thing. It's just going to be, he's going to use his tarps and tents rather than poles. And if you cut out a hole in the top, which means he's going to have to cut his tarp or position it in just the right way, it'll allow smoke to go up. So he'll be able to maintain a lot more heat and dry out and keep his clothes and his equipment dry. One of the things we saw with Mitch a few episodes ago is his clothes started to mold because of all the water. So it'll be interesting. I mean, he's got all these poles he's cutting down. The funny part is all the energy he put into cutting up those logs for the log cabin, he probably could have built a pit house by now or built this yurt in the first place and had it done. So he's moving. I'm curious where he's moving to and why he's taking the logs there. I'm assuming there's not... I mean, I'd be surprised that I guess there's not logs where he wants to be. Because that's really the thing. I mean, if you're going to do these logs, go freaking find a. He's got all these trees behind him. Why do you take all the poles all the way over there? Unless he took the poles from his camp. Maybe he took the poles from his old campsite. He didn't want to waste them. That's fine. That's fair. If that's what he's doing, that's fine. The biggest problem now is with him tearing down his old site. He's got a very limited time to make this happen, and now he's 20 feet up a tree. That seems like a very bad idea. I mean, he falls out of that tree, he's going to break a neck or a limb, or that just about hit him when it fell. So that's one of those things. Like, if that tree had hit his leg, he could have broken his leg. He could have just knocked him out of the tree. That could have been a whole lot of bad things right there. I mean, he's going to have. So it looks like what he's doing. So this is interesting. He's actually talking about carbohydrates and the lack of. What I'm wondering is if anybody ever goes out onto a loan, I'd be curious to see if somebody was already keto adapted before going out. Because your fats are going to be what's going to help you, your body burning fat. And so if this dude is, switching from carbs to fats is rough. It can get you diarrhea. It can get you lacking electrolytes. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff with this. And most of us generally run on carbs all the time. That's what we do. So I'd be curious if somebody got themselves keto adapted before going out here, so their body was already burning fat. Like, would it be easier for them than having to go through it out here? So somebody's already eating a high-fat diet. Their body's burning fat for fuel. I'd be curious to see the difference between these guys who are carb adapted and are running mostly on carbs and then trying to survive and change into survival. So it's definitely frosty, and the rain's it's turning into a lot of frost. The snow and the rain can be really interesting. Sam's shelter looks like it's going to fall over at any second. I really don't know how that thing stays up. So he's still trying to trap. So right now he's only got four traps for mice. I mean, even if he caught a mouse in every trap every day, he's only getting like 4 pizza pockets. There's nothing in it, and he's not catching them that fast. It's really, really in trouble. So he got this second trap that went off. The question is, did he get mice in it or not? Nothing. I mean, yeah, when you looked at the trap, the leaves were all covering it, so the wind can trip these traps. Bigger animals can trip these traps. I mean, this one looks the same deal. This one's covered in leaves. Oh, he got a mouse, but it's... And see, this is the problem with these mice. I mean, this is the problem I have with the deadfall traps. You look at how much that's mushed. That could expose and blow out the guts. That could taint the meat. This could really become a problem for Sam in a hurry. I mean, mice really aren't. They're honestly not even almost worth trapping. There's 35 calories in a mouse. So if he needs, let's say he needs 2,100 calories a day. Let's pull out the calculator here. 2,100 divided by 35. He needs 60 mice a day to maintain the calories that he really needs. So this is rough. I mean, he's not around to be able to take care of this girl and the baby. He has virtually no meat. I mean, 35 calories is really insignificant. I mean, that's really, really rough. And again, some of this stuff comes down to Sam's roasting the mouse. We've talked about this a bunch of times. I boil it. You're going to get tiny bits of nutrition from the marrow of the bones. You're going to get all the fat that just dripped off of that mouse. Any fat that's there, he's probably at this point just eating protein. And the problem with just eating protein is that can actually make you sick too. So, I mean, that's really problematic for these guys. I'd be really, really, really worried about. I mean, he's only caught a couple of mice and has not really gotten very far. And that's the problem with these types of deadfall traps. Is a deadfall trap doesn't do a whole lot for big game or anything that's sustainable. Man, these guys get beautiful views. Ruh-roh. So here's one of the problems with the way Lucas did this is he took apart his shelter to make a new one. And that really can suck. Because essentially he doesn't have a shelter to go back to. And while it's good to have the poles from his old site, I think the smartest thing he probably should have done, and it's funny, she says that it all comes down to making decisions, and he's made a bunch of decisions that I honestly thought would take him out. I'm really, really surprised that he's there, to be honest. Like cutting down the logs, I thought he'd be done with that. He tried a couple things building the canoe that didn't work and spent a bunch of energy. He tried to split a cedar log with his knife and spent quite a amount of time doing it, only to find that once it split, it twisted on it. So there's a bunch of these things, like this decision right here to take down his campsite was not a good decision. I'd rather leave the site up. And then when you take the poles down, you've got firewood. At the very end, when you dismantle it, I'd go build the yurt and leave a tent up so you still have survivability and warmth. It'd just be what I'd do. I think he'll make it through the night, but I mean, you better have a good sleeping bag. I mean, it's 20 degrees is pretty freaking cold and not worth messing around in. So they're now moving over to Ellen. It's the next morning. Lots of frost. It's only 17 degrees, so it's real easy to get hypothermia. Alan's fire's out, so he's been sleeping with his gloves. I mean, here's the deal: is his campfire's gone. He didn't maintain it overnight, so now everything's all freezing. This can be really problematic, you know? I mean, it's so cold, you really got to keep things warm. What's interesting is he's walking what looks like without his coat on. So one of the things about the frost and the cold is it makes everything kind of crack, so it's going to be harder to try to hunt prey if they were going to hunt something. But I don't think Alan has a bow to hunt with. I know Sam has one, but the only nice part about the snow is it's not as wet, so they're gonna run into less of like just being soaked and like Mitch getting his stuff moldy. It'll get frost on it maybe, but it's gonna make an interesting difference. So yeah. I mean, Alan's got some firewood, so he should be able to keep it going. He's got a mattress he basically made out of pine needles that's keeping him off the ground, so that'll be good. So he used to have dripping in his cave a little bit, and now he's got icicles. And that cold can be brutal. And that's the thing. I mean, if it's cold enough in his shelter that he's got icicles forming, it's too cold. He's not keeping his temperature up. He's not keeping the fire up, and that can be a chore. Lucas is just waking. Lucas is getting up 19 degrees. I mean, that's yeah. He's like, I gotta get my shelter done today. No shit. Where the hell did he get the crates from? He's got a couple of milk crates. I wonder if he found them on the beach. I mean, there's a lot of plastic. So he's got. So he's created all these logs. So he's got his canvas wall up already. That's really good. He's lining up. I mean, this is pretty good. He's got his first tripod set up. He's getting these logs set up. And he's smart. Like he said, this is going to help him get as dry as possible. I think. So he said yurts have been used in Mongolia for thousands of years. They got some wolves howling, but it doesn't seem to bother him. I mean, this shelter's going to be good because it's going to keep him. What's interesting is it doesn't look like he's got 3 tarps. So it looked like he picked some of these options to do this. So he seems to have picked some rather interesting options here. So he did cut a hole in the top to allow for the smoke to come out the top, and that's good because you got smoke coming out. You can get fire inside. He's going to be able to keep himself nice and warm. The first couple of times, now one of the things he's got to do here is make sure he creates a fire draft. And that's, I mean, this is pretty normal. You got to be able to get fast, dry burning wood. If he's burning wet wood, it's going to be smoky. If he's burning green wood, it's going to be smoky, at least initially. But the thing is, you can get a lot of firewood in. You can store like half of that semicircle, have half of it be your bed, fire in the middle, the other half be your firewood. And as the fire's going, it'll dry it all out. It'll help make it ready to actually burn better. So a good hot burn is going to be important. Let's go see what's going on with Mitch this morning while it's nice and cold. Now Mitch wishes his camp was back where it was supposed to be. So I think he wishes he was back where he was before, but I mean he needs to be where he's got water. His boat's still out there, although I haven't seen him in any of the videos using it, which is weird that it's still out. Why doesn't he? I hope it means he's using it. It would be dumb to just leave a tarp just sitting there, so I'm assuming he's using it. If I'm looking at Sam's structure, see, this is the thing about Sam's lean-to A-frame. Sam doesn't have a back wall. So it allows, if the wind goes in the right direction, the wind will just whip through his shelter. There's a couple things I'm concerned about, and I'm worried Sam's not going to make it through the cold. So he left his gloves out. So Alan left his gloves out, and they froze solid. I mean, it comes down to, again, even something like that goes back to Joe and losing his fire steel. You got to watch your gear. And what's interesting here is, again, these different structures. Lucas built a yurt, which means he's got fire inside of his shelter, which will keep him warm while he's there. Sam's keeping a fire in his shelter to keep him warm. Alan's not. Alan's fire is outside of his shelter, but it's right outside his shelter, and his shelter is kind of a cave, so it's still going to allow some heat to go in there. But Mitch is the only one who doesn't have fire inside of his shelter, and that can really get him. I mean, that's the thing. His fire's still outside of his shelter. He's just in a little one, and that can be brutally cold for him. I mean, all these guys are hunkering down. I mean, when it gets down to that, even down to 17 degrees, even with a 0 degree sleeping bag, you can get really cold. You really need something rated to like -40, full big mummy bag. Like, it's going to be brutal. And that takes a lot of money. And that's what I'm curious on. And I don't know this, is if they have limits on what they can and can't bring out. Like, if you pick a sleeping bag, are you allowed to spend the money on a -40 degree sleeping bag? I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, they're expensive. A -40 degree sleeping bag, even on Amazon. Let's come check it out. -40 degree sleeping bag. Well, I guess it would be a Sub-Zero sleeping bag. So a 0 degree bag is $50. They're not expensive. I mean, most bags you're going to find are 0 degree bags. So I guess it's probably going to easy to find one on REI, not on. -40 sleeping bag. Because I know there are sleeping bags that go down to -40. All right, so there's a Gore-Tex one that I don't know if they'd let them use these. It's really a question of would they let them use this stuff. It's like this Gore-Tex Phantom sleeping bag from REI is $900. But I mean, it's a -40 degree sleeping bag. Something like this would last them a long time, and it's really a question. I mean, some of this is going to be a question of these guys' resources. What they have to buy their gear before they go out, so can they afford that? To me, I'd spend $1,000 if it means a longer survival chance to win $500,000. I mean, that's a small trade off. That's a small investment. Alan's in a full snowstorm. That's wow. That's going to make filming a lot harder because now it's going to get all blurry, and like that's going to make filming just a challenge alone. Just the fact that they get all this snow coming in. So Alan got a nice fish. Looks like he got a duck. We talked about this in a couple of episodes that, man, there's birds out there and they can get them. I don't know how he got the duck, but he's got a pretty good sized fish in there too. So that's good food. I mean, if Alan can weather the cold, I honestly think he's got a good chance of winning this. I mean, he's really got a good chance of winning. I don't know who wins this, just full disclosure. I know who wins some of the other seasons in advance just because I've already watched them and know. I actually only know the winner of, I think, season 6, which is Redemption, and then season 3 because I watched Zachary Fowler, so I already know he won. But these guys, I don't know. So Mitch lost his fishing net. That's making it hard. So he's got to find another way to get food and fish. And we talked previously about fish traps that he could set up that are almost like fishing. They're almost like fishing poles. So it's almost like you being out there because if you set up the right trap with the toggle, so when the fish hits the line and pulls the toggle and it snaps up, it sets the line. It lets you know that the trap was sprung. It sets it as if you were there. You just got to go get it. So that's really, really interesting. So he's going to try to set up a new line, basically. And here's the thing, like they can all take out a lot of paracord. So if you got paracord out there, strip out that. And I've seen in some other episodes some guys do like they've actually woven some fishing nets and stuff like that. So that might have an option to create a new gill net, unless he's already used up all his lines. So So he's trying to essentially bait it, um, cracking open a bunch of the muscles. The real struggle I see with this here is A, he could end up being wet. B, he's got to set up that line, but here's the thing with this bait. Bait doesn't last very long. It does really well when it's fresh. And I've found this with even like catfish and stuff. The catfish is, when you use chicken liver for catfish, it's only good for about 15, 20 minutes of working the line. Otherwise, the smell kind of goes out and you really lose a lot of the opportunity for the fish to come find your bait. So if he doesn't do it as the tide's coming in, like if the tide's just gone out and the tide's not coming in, he's going to have a lot rougher time of it. So Lucas, again, all these guys are going to start struggling with food. The winter months are hard if you're not prepped, and that's the thing I found looking at these guys with what they're doing. The winter months mean rougher seas, which means it's going to be harder for him to get out and do some fishing. I mean, that rough ocean's going to be rough. So the fish have moved a lot. The fishing location, the fishing little guys that he put out, he has to go get it. He's put out a bunch of different lines. He's got a big pelican, but it looks like he's actually stuck in it. Like he tried to dive down, but it looked like his arm was stuck in the line. Maybe he gets lucky. The hard part is he's got, and this comes down to, we talked about the flat bottom boat's going to be slow. And the paddle that he's got is a single-sided canoe paddle. So he doesn't have a kayak paddle to really get some speed going with him. He's got to paddle a couple, move over, paddle a couple. And right now it's raining. He's got to go out and get his stuff, but it's raining. It could be pretty easy for his canoe to start filling up his canoe. Like, he's got to be careful. He got the bird. So he's got some type of fishing bird that he killed because it was wrapped up in the nets. I thought it was. It looked like it. So he got a cormorant. That's food for him. That is food for him. So while he doesn't get fish, that's bird. I mean, I'd go for that. I mean, he's lucky. He didn't get fish, but he got birds, and birds can be just as valuable for that. I mean, you can boil down the bones and get some nice soup out of it and some broth. And he goes, it ain't my lunch now, it's lunch. It's funny. It explains why he's skinny. He says he's been a vegetarian. There's no vegetarians in survivalism. There's just not. I mean, especially in the winter months, there's no way you can do that. I mean, it's not possible. He's trying to cut the neck off. I wouldn't, to be honest, you can boil all that stuff. So and some of the meat and stuff, if he saves some of it, he's washing it in the seawater. Bad idea. I mean, for somebody to be a vegetarian to have to kill stuff, that's got to be hard. So he's checking the bird to check its health. But I mean, if you boil and cook it really well, you're going to be fine. I mean, he's going to be fine. So his biggest concern is losing weight. I mean, that's a problem. I mean, especially with him being a vegetarian previously and being so skinny. I mean, you look at how slender he is. The nice part about him being slender is it means he consumes less calories than the big guys do when he's moving and doing stuff. But it also, again, these guys roast their meat. I mean, I know it's nice to have it every once in a while, but you pan roast a meat, that's just going to be harder to. I mean, there's a lot of fat that comes out of it and boils out of it. I'd really rather just boil the meat. I mean, you could make a decent stew out of this that could probably feed him longer. I mean, that's a stew that's going to last for quite a while. So he goes, "Have you ever seen a vegetarian?" Well, pescatarians are close enough, and they eat chicken, so good to go. But I mean, if he gathers in some seaweed, he can actually do a pretty decent little stew that help him. So Sam's struggling emotionally again. I mean, he's got a lot going on. I mean, traps aren't working out right. It's cold. It's his kid's gonna be born at home. I don't know when. The isolation for these guys is brutal. I mean, that's something a lot of us don't think about is actually being on your own. It's a very specific personality type who can do it and not get phased by it. And they're usually loners. They're not people who are around people in general. And so that isolation can be rough. Looks like I mean that's one of those things is it's not necessarily that the weather or the food or anything is going to break these guys. It's what are they thinking about that does it. We actually saw this in the last episode when they were interviewing Joe after he got rescued. And Joe said, he was looking and looking and searching the beach and raking through the gravel trying to find his fire steel. And the problem with that is as he was doing it, he admitted this, is as he was searching and searching for his fire steel, he started psyching himself out and going, well, if I lose this, I'm done. I can't get going. And he basically talked himself into quitting before he even confirmed that he had to. And I just wonder if he could have stayed out if he had maintained his fire, done some other stuff to just try to make it better. But right now, Sam's struggling with the same thing. I mean, I think this wakes up a lot of people to not taking for granted being around people. I remember I watch a lot of Zachary Fowler's YouTube, Fowler's Makery and Mischief, and he talked about this. When he got back, he didn't want to be on technology. He didn't want to be on all this stuff. He just wanted to talk to people. He liked talking to people. And Sam's, I thought Sam's going to go home a couple of times because of what he says. But I'm curious because he says, he wants to go home. He doesn't want to be out there. He's done. He might quit. That once you let that thought process into your mind, that can take you out. That's enough to get you to quit and leave. I don't know. Maybe he's just venting, and that could be healthy too. To just vent that I'm sick of being here, blah blah blah. That can kind of help you deal with it. I don't know. I mean, once you entertain those thoughts of I want to go home, a lot of times you go home. All right, so we're 35 weeks or 35 days, 5 weeks. Somebody's gonna drop. They don't all drop in the last episode, so somebody's gonna drop in this episode. It might be Sam. It might be Mitch. To be honest, I would be surprised if it's Lucas or Alan. Mitch lost his fishing traps. If his little lines don't work, that's going to be problematic for him. So his big problem he's got right now is his tide's in, so his food's clear out there, and he's not going to be able to get out there. So I guess they said during this is low tide. So Mitch actually thinks it's high tide and the tide's in. But the tide's actually out, but the tide out is not all the way down to where it was before. So he's got to get all the way out there. I wonder if you could kill a swan. There's 2 swans he filmed going across the lake. I wonder, a swan would be a lot of meat. Swan and a goose could give you a bunch of calories. And the real problem is if that tide is out and his lines are still under 3 feet of water, his only option is either to go out there and try to get it, or he's going to have to deal with this. It's funny. He's talking about, it's different being out there by yourself versus with your kids. And that's really the thing. I mean, if he was out there with his wife and his kids, you know how much different it would be to try to provide for 3 people? They're barely providing for 1. This is funny. He goes, well, if I had my wife and kid out here, I'd be going in game-getting machine. And this isn't good enough for them. Why don't you do it for yourself? That's my question. If you're good at going and getting game and getting all this stuff, go freaking do it. Like, that's how you're going to win this game and survive. So, yeah, I don't know. This is going to be rough on them. Sorry, my wife just popped in, so he's a little bit upset now. Hi. Hello. Hi. So, I mean, again, Alan seems to be all right. He got a duck and a fish, so he seems like he's going to be okay. Lucas seems like he's okay for right now. I mean, he got a bird. I mean, there's just... It's funny. I don't know. And maybe they will quit. Maybe it's their mentality. I really don't... I mean, Lucas has a better shelter now. Alan's been in the same shelter, which I kind of feel like that can start to weigh on you. It's not a very big shelter. It's good because it's small. It'll allow him to keep... it'll keep him warm. He's got a point. I've actually heard this from some adventurers. Alan just said, if you know you can do it, why do you keep doing it? And that's actually one from a mentor of mine, Alistair Humphreys. He walked across the empty quarter of Saudi Arabia. And during that, they were about halfway across. He goes, I know we can make it. We've walked for days and days and days. We've walked for 20, 30 miles a day. I know we can do it. I know we can walk there. So if we know we can, why do we continue to do this? So be good. Be good. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. You want to come up here? Come on. Good boy. This is Dobby, for anybody who wants to know. He's a good boy. Sal's just kind of hanging in there. I mean, again, he could drop. He could have everything going for him, and the mental aspect of just dealing with everything, they could just decide, I'm done. So that's this whole thing is a mental game more than anything, which is really interesting. So it's kind of interesting to just see what happens. So Lucas has been out for quite a long time. Looks like he's got a pretty good... The weather's lightened up. Things are getting better. His yurt's there. His yurt looks good. I mean, it's small. He's able to keep a fire in it. I mean, that's... And so for him, I mean, he's got an air raid horn, which I think is another bear deterrent. I really think it was definitely worth setting up. And he set it up in a day or so. I mean, imagine if he had set that up that's really the thing, is if he had looked at doing that from the beginning, how much more could that have helped in the rain and with everything else, is to have that set up. He didn't decide to set it up until later, and that's kind of, I might have set up a rudimentary shelter the first day. He found water, I think, on the first or second day, just out walking. And at that point, I think I just freaking do that. So he's making a bunch of different things right now. So he's trying to make some type of instrument. I don't know that instruments are nice, but you can sing, you can whistle. I don't know that I would be spending my time on something like this, to be honest. There's a lot of other things he could be doing that would help him. I don't know that I would be wasting my time on an instrument personally. That's a little too artsy-fartsy, and there's better things I could be doing with my time. And the biggest thing is, a lot of this work he's doing is putting a dull edge on his knife. He's going to have to sharpen it. So he's adding extra work for himself. I just don't know that I would be... he's put a lot of effort into this thing. It's pretty nice. But I just don't know that I'd do that, to be honest with you. Just looking at what he's trying to do. So here's an interesting thing. We talked a few episodes ago with Alan. Alan made a spoon that just had a little divot in it that he had carved out. And I'd mentioned that if he did a burnout, he could get a much deeper one. So, so he looks like he's got a little bit of music going. He got a little bit of a face. He's basically made a guitar. He's made the strings out of fishing line. I don't know if he has... I'm hoping they're heavy ones. So, these are good things for him to do. It keeps him busy. This is going to help him from not going crazy. I just don't know that I would have taken that route as far as equipment goes. I probably would have done a lot more, maybe things that were a bit more useful would be what I do with it, just personally. But the music helps. It just helps him get something to do. But the thing about music, though, is it's going to scare off any game, so he's not going to be able to hunt anything locally. The fires are already going to do that and all the noise and stuff, but he's kind of... I guess it just helps him function. So do what you got to do. This has been in the woods too long. I guess that makes you happy. That's something to do at night and stuff like that. You could... it's a way to vent things, but, he's doing what he's got to do. He's really funny. He's just singing to himself. Sometimes when you see these guys, you're like, are they going crazy? Like, Sam was another one where I'm like, I kind of worried Sam was kind of losing it there. I thought Sam had lost it before he got out there. Sam's just a little bit quirky. Well, I guess they're doing it. Nobody's dropped. It's still 4 guys, so I was hoping they were going to drop somebody, but I guess the guys are going to drop in the last 2 episodes. This is going to wrap for episode 9, so we're going to see kind of what we got going on. This is boiling down to, we're looking at the few previews, and it's all a mental game now. They all can probably survive out here if they could keep their heads on. So we will see you all guys next time for episode 10. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.